Just a confirmation, you guys, it still looks like it's loading. There we go. Are you guys seeing it? Awesome. So a group of us are going to be presenting this. It's going to be a kind of organic, fluid presentation. So those who were on the coordinating committee or team for the ACE National Strategy, if you feel like something you want to build on that point, please just jump in. This is an all-in opportunity. If you have a question and clarifying that, why don't we hold those until we get to the end? We're gonna try and wrap this up as a presentation within probably 20 minutes, and then we have a discussion that we'd like to facilitate with you guys. So that's really where we want to spend most of the time today. So just to set you some context of why we're doing this today, it was at the 2019 Drawdown Learn event where Timothy Damon, myself, Laura Wineland facilitated a meeting where we said, you know what, we need to take an item of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, a recommendation for all countries to develop something called an ACE National Strategy. And at this event in Rhinebeck, New York, the community there that was assembled around Drawdown Learn agreed that we should have an ACE National Strategy. We should undertake that process, even though we didn't have administration leadership to say we should. It's a presidential action to do this. So we took it to the Clean Leadership Board in December of 2019. The Clean Leadership Board, which is, you guys are on the Clean Network, but the Clean Leadership Board said we unanimously agree that we should be helping bring forth a ACE National Strategy. So it was just over a year ago, 13 months ago, that we started this process. And so we now, as of November 30th, formally released a framework, which is a new idea, that would guide the development of an ACE National Strategy. Again, that must be executed by an administration. It's a part of a treaty. So that's just so we're clear. So that's what we're talking about here. This is an official, not official like that, but this is a fulfillment of something the Clean Leadership Board started 13 months ago. So we're actually, for those who are listening, who are not here with us today, we're not just presenting to ourselves here, we're presenting to the network. We fulfilled that action. And the way we did it was we launched something called the ACE National Strategy planning framework to guide if the next administration, which is about to start, decides to do this. We can get into those details. For those of you who don't know what ACE is, for those of you who've been tracking the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, ACE is a provision in the original treaty called Article 6. It was reaffirmed in Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, which has these 6 dimensions, these outside circles, all for accelerating climate action. So education has played a critical role in how they thought from 1992 that would be a critical element in solving climate change. Training, public awareness, public access, public participation, international collaboration. So, but that's not really been operating that way. What's different in an ACE is that it is really about these 6 elements working together as a set, not just education, not just training, because there's a lot of interdependencies from that. So just so you understand what ACE is, it's a really amazing framework that it goes beyond what the Clean Network normally focuses on. So it's important to, this is bigger than what we normally talk about. Did Azatis get on here yet? I can't see the chat.
No, but Haley can also speak to some of this, I think.
Yeah. So why don't and Tom's on here as well. I just keeping all my windows going. But just know that there's a march in the international community towards COP26. And part of what they're trying to do is accelerate climate action. And one of the threads that's going to COP26 and beyond is building robust ACE work. And a lot of these events that are on this diagram are part of that. But one of the things we looked at when we started kind of why we were agitating towards this as a community was that, the next one member of one party in the campaign said, we're going to rejoin the Paris Agreement. Well, now that process is formally going to start. And so the question became quickly, well, what does it mean for the US, the only country in the world, to pull out of an agreement that it spent a lot of time creating, to come back in? And so what does that coming back in look like? And so we saw an opportunity that ACE in the United States could be a much larger part of our coming back into the Paris Agreement, which means we have to do as opposed to just say we're going to do. And so this whole effort was about really robustly thinking that through, talking about it, figuring it out. Is it feasible? Why would it be valuable? How would we do it within our, as they say in the structure, the national circumstance? Our country is unique in some very important ways.
Corners a little easier.
What's that? Maybe that's not.
I think it was just background noise. I'm not sure who's driving, but just if I can be co-hosted, I'll manage that.
All right, thank you. So we can get into that more later, but one thing as we got into this, and I gotta thank Deb Morrison, who's on the call today, because we were talking about how to do this, and then all of a sudden she just gave me a swift kick in the butt and said, just start. And so we did. So thank you, Deb. Sometimes a friendly kick in the tush is a useful thing. So we began before we even knew how we were going to do it. So we committed to doing it, and then we figured out how to do it. So there's a little bit of that. So thanks, Deb. But there's some really important dimensions that we talked about, that building climate action during a pandemic, while racial inequality was completely exploding, it added some extra dimensions to this work. And so this work very quickly became intersectional, because we had economic and social inequality that was exacerbated and revealed. We had the job loss issue with the economics of the pandemic, and to do all of that and realize that climate action is a local subnational action mostly. So those things come together in a really important way, plus the reality that no other major emitting country, Indonesia, China, United States, European Union, have ever taken on this international recommendation and mandate about building a national strategy and using ACE to advance climate action. So that was kind of framing all of our thinking. So we convened with the support of the Spencer Foundation and the Wild Center, who's our fiscal agent, a robust, representative, diverse community of people, organizations, geographies, including territories and tribal nations. Again, the United States is a complicated country. It's not just one nation. We have over 570 nations inside the geography of our nation, something a lot of people forget. BIPOC communities were incredibly important. Women are incredibly important. Low-income communities, incredibly important. Youth, incredibly important. And we worked really hard together to make sure that that was representative inside of these conversations. I don't know, why don't I open it up here? Does anybody else who was involved in the coordinating team feel like there's another point that needs to be made, or does it feel well said?
Yeah, I'll add one piece to that, and others can jump in too. But so when you're looking at this kind of representation, what we're looking for, and we have to think about this when we talk about diversity, representational diversity is seeking what's called epistemological and axiological diversity. So we are seeking to have the varied, diverse lived experiences of peoples in America actually manifested in the activity, right? So we're trying to get different values, different education and knowledge bases, ways of understanding in play, so that we get the most innovative and equitable solutions coming out and like thinking together. And ethically, it's a stance that we take to the work. So we didn't leave this to chance. We actually designed for this and really struggled with it as we were trying to engage with it and like try to think about structural support to get that in place. So when you look at these outcome numbers, lots of people report outcome numbers like this in their work. I just want to really emphasize that there was structural design and thought and like considerable support. Kudos to the whole coordination team to try and get this in play from the beginning.
The paper that Deb was talking about at the beginning of this starts getting into our methodology, because no other country, as I said, no other major emitting country like us, and there's maybe no other country like us, has tried to do something like this. So we were making up methodologies on the fly because we were trying to capture exactly what Deb just said. I think at the end of the day, we were successful. It's not going to be perfect, but it was very successful in achieving that objective. And I'm very proud about that. Any other points that anybody wants to make on this point? We can move. Well, I didn't mean to actually advance the slide, but you know.
Nancy has a question.
Sure, Nancy.
A comment, really. I'm new to this, and I was just blown away when I read the ACE framework. It is so coherent, cogent, clear. It profoundly embodies the very values that you were talking about in its process and in its outcomes. And as a touchstone for everything that will come after, I was really moved, and I'm so totally on board.
Nancy, I thank you for those remarks. I think one thing I didn't say at the very beginning that's important is that this is not an official document of the U.S. government.
You did say it, and I totally understand it. And you did say that.
No, but the reason why I'm saying that is because what we did was by inverting the process that actually the UN guidance is, which is the government starts it, and then they go to the community, and then they come back to the government. We actually, because of our unique moment, could not do that. So we started with the community. And then we're coming to the government with the community and going back to the government and community. So because of our unique moment, we could not do it the way most have, but that actually opened up a tremendous valuable opportunity because we got much more clarity, independent of the government, what the community really saw was important and could be done, because most of the actors of this work actually are in the community, not the government. So really important flipping, but that was not because of design, it was because of the moment. But there's some value that came from that is important.
And
I
going
especially
forward,
love that part of it because I'm an advocate for a concept I call do it ourselves democracy. And if you're familiar with what has happened in Taiwan with the whole forking government process that's going on there, it's another emergent accidental thing that flips it. So thank you.
mm-hmm. And just to name too that while in this process, the UN suggests like that it be a government-led process, that it has some like mechanisms for that. Our paper that we just finished writing and this whole episode, we really like rooted it in a history of design, like community participatory design work that has been really extensive and others have used really effectively. I see Amy's here. I can see that like she's done work like that in California. And like, so really thinking about those processes that we know work well in grassroots environmental and justice efforts and amplifying that to the national level as the norm of what we should be doing instead of the accident going forward. So that's definitely, you know, there is history in research of that and in grassroots work of that being a good thing. And like, this is now a push that this should be the way we do it going forward.
Agreed. So one other reality that we, all of us who are in this community, and there's a lot more people in this community that are on this call today, is that as it relates to ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, education that is, you know, on climate and related to advancing climate action, training and so on, that space, that ecosystem of work in the United States it is robust. We have deep resources and capabilities and networks and actors and practice deep, but it's unaligned. And so the opportunities of bringing its fullness to advancing climate action is missing because we lack strategic coordination and purpose of a shared mission. So that's why we came to the ACE strategy, but running it is not because of the United Nations, but running it is because of our communities need it, and our nations and our states and our cities and our towns across. So, but you know, the reality is we have a lot of great capabilities, but when you add the ACE dimension, you start picking up these other resources that you might not put together in this ecosystem. So it's not just formal and informal education, and it's not just social movements. There are these other dimensions that actually open up a much richer ecosystem of work that, if aligned, can do much more important possible contributions than if they're unaligned and uncoordinated. So that opens up a real opportunity that we're trying to take full advantage of. So just to, you know, but as soon as you start going to ACE, you start opening up a bigger space. So what's missing? What's missing is the work needs to be sustained. It needs to be strategic, and there needs to be commitment, meaning that it's able to be sustained because we have policies and funding and decisions that are equitable, engage at scale, something all of us have been struggling with. But until we get the funding right, we can't hit scale. And that just came through loud and clear for years and years and years, but now we've fully named it. So anyway, but these are the things we're trying to do that we think is important, that's new in the work. So November 30th, we actually achieved the release of the framework. We have two, the members of the writing team here, Deb Morrison and Tom Bowman, the Herculean, monumental task that it was to transform the dialogues of community process through a series of steps to actually generate a document like this, that Nancy, I appreciate the way you described it, on time, cannot be understated and underappreciated. So, so this is available. You know, Haley, if you don't mind putting in the chat the link to it, you know, since you're here with us. And then, you know, we're not done. That's another step on the milestone. So, and, you know, part of another project that Deb and Tom did, we had these testimonials, but when people read this, like Nancy, you said just a moment ago, they find that there's something remarkable, unique, and powerful in what is in this document. Documents actually sometimes are powerful. And this one did some powerful things, and the perspectives from different community of practice. So this one, I just chose Sarah Sutton from the culture sector lead for the We Are Still In initiative, who comes out of the more informal education world, found this to be a really important work. What happened to that slide? Oh, I know where it is. So just keep that going. So where are we going from here?
Frank, can I just amplify something? If you can go back to cover, it's great. Deb and I saw our task as trying to express everything that the dialogue participants contributed in, and try as much as possible to reflect their own voices in this document. And because of that, you know, our job was to organize it and bring clarity to all that they contributed. And because of that, this is a really substantial, substantive set of recommendations. It's a vision, it's guidance to the federal government in how to go about ACE, and it really demonstrates the depth of wisdom and knowledge across the ACE, the broad, diverse ACE community in this country. So if you haven't read it, I think you're going to find a lot of really useful and hopefully inspiring material in there.
Thank you, Tom. I think what Tom just said, because it's representative of what was said from lots of diverse perspectives, as opposed to we were editorializing or steering what was said. It was representative. And that's exactly what was needed. And so Deb and Tom did an amazing job of of respecting and honoring that work as opposed to guiding it in there. So,
And the one thing I would add, that the reason that we went ahead and did a book that sort of wraps around the framework was because we didn't want to take voice in the framework. We didn't feel that to be appropriate. We wanted to contextualize and like have the framework stand as a community voice. But we did find that as we saw the framework come together, that there would be this need to help the framework move through certain spaces that may not have the shared language. And many of the reviewers, the strategic reviewers, shout out to all of those folks because they were able to name areas where they thought language would be a tension or language would be a challenge as we jump from community to community. And so we were able to take that feedback and then think, what else would we need to write to be able to help this move smoothly from across different spaces? And so writing a couple additional chapters that sort of sit in front of the framework itself. And then we invited a number of the different strategic reviewers and people involved in sessions and dialogues from diverse communities to write commentaries that are also included in the book. So the book has other voices that are strategic across different kinds of communities that speak to the framework. And so we were trying to hold that all together as a way to sort of think about what is the power of this type of document going forward and how can it be used.
so just to set that up a little bit more, because we just announced a book without actually announcing the book. So, you know, while the framework was a monumental task to do by November 30th, the writing team weren't done yet. They decided that they also wanted to write a book and get it published. And Tom, when does the book hit when is the
February
pre-order?
1st.
What was it?
So it's available for pre-order as of yesterday on Amazon, and it will be released on the 1st of February.
Right.
I've never been engaged in so much writing in such a short period of time. That's actually not even in my job, like my official job description.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, just know that the quantity of effort that's gone on over the last couple of months is really must be appreciated. So the link to that is in the notes here somewhere. So, you know, the pre-order, but you see the name, it's very easy to find, Empowering Climate Action in the United States. But and those commentaries are stunning to read, to hear this work reflected from people who've been leading this effort for, you know, different pieces of it. And it's really stunning. So just to help continue to frame this, you know, what we did in the framework was provide a roadmap of how to build a national strategy. It offers some coordination pieces to it. It aligns with what's the new administration's prioritizing, and clearly they're prioritizing jobs. Rebuilding the economy, Build Back Better is the name of the transition team's website. So it kind of gives you a clue as to how they're thinking about climate and economic rebuilding and social justice all at the same time. So that intersection that we were working on all the way back in August, and actually before that, because we were designing it, is exactly the same as what they're trying to do. So we're in really good position. And I think, you know, in the interest of time, you have these slides. Let's just move this. So the book is released. Pre-order starts today or yesterday or something like that, Tom. I did include some of these as we call them, testimonials or commentary fragments. I'm not going to go through them here. You have the slides on the Clean website, thanks to Anna Gold. So you can go back and read the testimonials, but it's really important stuff. So we have an ask for you as members of the community. Become a signatory. And Haley, do you mind putting the link to the signatory form in the chat? I'm assuming yes. So and the reason why we're doing this is because both individuals and organizations can sign this, and we've been growing the number, and it's very dynamic right now. On the ACE website, which you see on the page, which is aceframework.us. You can see the current list, and you know, on probably a weekly basis, we're going to update the list. But and then promote it within your networks. Just like what Nancy said earlier, just dive into it, read it, think about it, sign it, and join in. Because if this happens and we get to actually do this officially, whether it's soon or eventually, because it's such a smart thing to do, participate with your fullness and your networks and your capabilities, and participate in the dialogues that lead to the national strategy. Ask others to join this process, participate in the activities of this work. And then also the one way to stay engaged is on the website. The sign up, you can sign up for the newsletter to stay up to date. That's all communications about this work will go through that. So that if you want to stay engaged in this work, sign up for the newsletter is the easiest way to do that. So because we know this is a time for bold action, but it cannot be done by ourselves. This is a we shared mission space. So we invite you to join this, participate in it, read it. And if you have other contributions that you think weren't fully there, we're looking for that in the planning of the development of the plan. So this is just how you can become a signatory, and these are the people that were involved in this task. And remember that a lot of the Clean Leadership Board was actively involved in the creation of this effort. So this is a manifestation of clean, but not just clean. It's much bigger than that. Deb?
And if I can, as you look at this list of coordinating team members, I really want you to think too about, as a learning scientist, I just have to say this, that we learn in relationship to each other. All right. And yep. Things move in relationship. And Maybeck's work is like really strong about that, trusted messengers. So you are trusted messengers in your own communities. If you want any of these folks, I think I can speak for all of them. If you want any of these folks to come and speak to you or like share a briefing deck like this, we all have access to it. We can all come and talk to you about any of this or your communities. We are really committed, as you might imagine from the amount of work that's been put forward so far. We're really committed to seeing this work move in the world. And so anything that you can help any of these folks with, not like just Tom and myself as writers for this, but any of the folks involved in this, help move this work in the world, we are happy to lean into that for you. So please reach out to us.
Agreed. Well said.
I'd also like to amplify just one thing that you can sort of see in this coordinating team if you know these people or you look at their affiliations and job titles, and that is that the ACE work, and Frank was talking about this earlier, puts the education work that many of you do into a new kind of partnership with behavioral sciences, with professional development and on-the-job training, with policy making at the community, state, and regional levels, especially, and with more than and with the business community, and more than that. And when you do that kind of cross-pollination, community groups, climate justice and environmental justice networks, and all of it, it builds a different understanding of how your work combines and enhances and shares with the work of other disciplines, which, and I've already heard this from a number of people, that it is changing the way that they're thinking about the work that they do. They're starting to see how the work they do can be adjusted to better align with other elements of ACE. And I think this is the real magic of ACE that's hard to describe, because people experience a shift that if you just say there will be a shift in the way you think about your work, it doesn't really mean very much to people. But when they experience it, they suddenly come at their work with a renewed sense of mission. And that is exactly what we all need. So find a way to dive in as much as you can, as much as you want to. As Deb says, reach out to any of us, because there's a lot here.
It is significant. There's no way around that. One thing before we get to discussion, I just wanted to close this with was that this would not have happened without a lot of partnership. The Spencer Foundation provided us funds to equitably bring people in and pay them for their time. That is a practice that one of our members of the leadership board has been pushing hard on us to do, Reb Anderson. And, you know, Noah's been at the table here. Citizens Climate Lobby, this would not have happened without them. ECOS, they gave us the kick to go in this direction. The Wild Center was the fiscal agent, and the Clean Leadership Board and the Clean Community played a key role in facilitating the networks necessary and the relationships to make this happen, plus the leadership. And then obviously Bowman Change, you know, with Tom's speed of writing with clear and what's the way to say it, Tom? You know, you honor.
Oh, just brilliance and stuff like that. That'd be fine.
No,
Not humility.
Oh, and humility. Yeah, don't forget humility.
I was going more for the philosophy you used was just the right approach for this.
Oh, I know how to say it. I know how to
right.
say it.
Yeah, what you got?
Keep it simple
Yeah.
and
but
clear.
yes, but also honor that I am not the author. I am capturing the words
Yeah.
of what was said and putting that forth. You know, we didn't ask you to do it that way, Tom. You just felt that that was the way to do it, and it was perfect. So
Well, and so did Deb. Don't give
No,
me all the credit for that.
You guys now you're starting to see how our coordinating teams go. So the task, you know, so that's going to close out the formal remarks, and we are beginning to prepare for the decision that again, this has not been decided, so but we're planning for it to actually happen one way or another. And that is, we need to transition from the development, should we develop an ACE national strategy, to how we develop an ACE national strategy. So the rest of the conversation today, Haley Krim, who is an amazing member of our team, she's been the Clean Network project coordinator, that's I think the name we came up with, because she's just an amazing part of our team and super detailed. So I'm going to take this out of presentation mode so we can actually see the notes. But the question to you all, and you all come from different perspectives, so please go off mute unless you've got a noisy space, and we're going to have a conversation. And what it is about we know that, remember that slide where we had a lot of representative groups, and it was very carefully nurtured, but we know we need to go more. One of the people who's on this call, Frank Bradshaw, made a very clear comment that during the community review that the rural communities needed to be more deeply engaged in this process. It cannot only be urban and suburban and coastal. It needs to be all community strategy. And there's a lot of rural America that need to be seen as and benefit from this work. So, but that's just one. So asking you guys of who needs to be engaged, whether it's individuals, communities, organizations, networks, in the development of the national strategy, not the framework, the strategy. Our timing, if we're able to pull it off, would be to deliver it to the best of our ability, or at least the public review version of it at COP26 in November of this year. I have confidence we can do this because we just did something insane and then we threw a book on top of that. So I'm feeling like we might be able to pull this off, but you know, 80% good on time is way better than 100% late. I said that so many times in this process, so we're going to keep on.
And I don't even know what it means.
Well, you know what late means.
I do.
And there's a moment here. So this is open. Who needs to be involved? If you can name them, or you can, whether it's an individual, an organization, you know, a lot of the names are available in the framework. But you know, if somebody was already involved and you name them, that's great. But you know, don't hesitate to kind of like, well, who was involved? Let's just be generative here. So I'm gonna stop. We're at 38, 22 minutes.
Braiding Sweetgrass.
That's a great book. And my next favorite one is this. We're doing a book club on All We Can Save, which I know Frank is probably like, Deb, seriously, do you just keep that book in front of you? I'm like, yeah.
The historically Black colleges.
Yep.
That's a good
Yep.
one.
Yep. What else?
Youth climate leaders.
Yep.
Boundary organizations for the entertainment industry, like the Science and Entertainment Exchange and Hollywood Health and Society.
Can Emily, can you put those specific names? And if anybody has really specific names, if you can add them to the chat so we can save
Yeah.
the chat. But I would like to hear them verbally too, but also put them in the chat. That would be great.
Yep. Totally.
Business leaders.
Do you have any Genevieve? Is there like a specific entry point to business leaders?
I was thinking particularly those involved in energy, transportation, and maybe technology, but mostly energy and transportation is who I had in mind in particular.
Great.
I've been thinking,
Carrie.
say it again.
Buttigieg and Carrie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're on that.
I thought you might be.
And going with business communities, also the socially responsible investment community, like Ceres,
Yes.
CRES, and regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
And here in California, we have the Romero Institute and its connections with the Roman Catholic Church. And and Romero's involvement. They're creating a California Green New Deal process they've been going through for a year now. Faith communities.
Hey ho.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we reached out to her for a commentary, but she couldn't do it on our timeline because we're fast. So it was a little tricky. But we'll probably reach out to her as we propagate this work more deeply.
And
teachers and educators.
Professional associations across all of the different professions, like the American Institute for Architecture was one of the that took a lead in these things early on, and the related academic certification fields and so forth.
Somebody else was naming another one. Who was that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Teachers and educators as well.
That's where my home has been for a long time, in sort of the K-12 and higher ed communities. So that one I feel more aware of covering and I'm deeply connected to. And Dawn's new effort among the education community for informal educators as well, for researchers, I think is going to be important. I like Dawn, how now it's your initiative. Dawn,
I think it's really important to engage the informal educators, right? Because we need to get the entire nation on board with this. And that's a really good way to engage a lot of people.
Yeah, I was really excited that Judy Browse and her team worked with us to produce one of the commentaries that's in the book. So that's been really fabulous.
Genevieve, there is a bias towards K-12 in this work, with leaders, not from the practitioners, but from the leaders when they think about this. And so just know that there's a firm commitment that it's all forms of education, all educators on the education part of this, but it's bigger than that. So, but just know that is a firm, that's a line in the sand.
And actually,
thanks, Frank. You made that very clear. I really appreciate that.
And there's a really important distinction too about what is being learned. So when we talk about climate change learning, we often think about just climate change, but we're actually framing everything in climate justice. And so justice is something that many people who are working in areas of STEM need to learn. So it's learning in multiple directions. It's not just learning about climate change and adaptations, but actually learning with and from communities who have been doing this on the front line too.
And along those same lines, my background is working mostly with community colleges, all the paraprofessionals and labor unions and local industries, local chambers of commerce. And I loved one of the things that surfaced in the Drawdown conference this week. Let's make all jobs green jobs. So that we're looking at all sectors. And
that's good.
Shifts,
Brilliant.
Shifts in, I want to just say, in my passion is partly changing the curricular requirements and certification requirements in each field so that it's a pivot point for changing all the sectors.
Mm.
Whoa. If we shift worldview, that goes down through everything.
Exactly.
So
I don't know if it needs to be said because you've already mentioned the involvement in the leadership team, but tribes and indigenous organizations.
yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this work was actually funded out of Spencer Foundation with Dr. Megan Bang. That is a central principle in the work.
Yeah. Let's be clear that what we're talking about here is using the convening powers of like the White House and administration and trying to draw much more representation into this work. So this naming we're doing now is really just starting to give us orientations to make sure that when we start using larger and coordinating and engagement architectures, we're making sure that these considerations are in that. These are no small tasks to do, but we think that we can draw in more resources to get it done in a true national, not federal, national way. So there's a lot of nice that I see some people that I don't recognize here. So I just want to make sure that some of the people that I'm not used to seeing on our network calls, if they have anything that they want to add here.
I know, I'm deeply curious. I
me
see
too.
Paige and Wyatt and Lauren. I haven't, and Leslie, I haven't seen you all before. And Jessica, I know I've been in other locations with you and love to hear from you too. So.
What do you guys
I've
think?
been thinking a lot about healthcare workers and how much we need to emphasize the overlap between healthcare and climate change and climate justice.
Yes.
Agreed.
I want to add to what was said about community colleges and tribes by saying that I think some special attention needs to be put to community colleges in urban in rural areas.
Mm.
The Dalles here in Oregon is right next to the largest wind farm on the West Coast. And so they have a wind energy program. But
Right.
also I'd plug into their tribal colleges, really putting a focus on both of those.
Thank you, Frank. Others?
If I might add to that college angle, I would encourage you to go after trade schools because we're talking about a lot of jobs, in infrastructure. And so if we leave that sector out, it looks pretty imperial. So
thanks for naming that, John, because we actually have been working across a number of different state efforts to try and pull in that CTE component of education in the K-12 system more tightly into climate work, but even broader with like vocational schools and like trade schools. That'd be great. That's really important. Thank you.
Nice to see you again, John.
Hey.
there's some NCSE, well, actually it's GCSE, GCSE memberships from the previous conference that just rolled into here. So that's
awesome.
You're totally welcome and awesome.
Let's float the boat.
One other thing that you about the thing that you named, John, is on a personal note, my brother is an iron worker, and like in conversations with him about the work, we're siblings, we're really close, and like he's come along with me on my climate change education journey over the last 3 decades. And so like he works in heavy industry in like this space where he's thinking, he's in charge of the rigging crew down there, and he's thinking about like, how do you organize for this? How do you mitigate like issues? How do we adjust technologies? So he's actually really innovative and is like pushing that industry in very particular ways. So it's really fascinating to think about what can be done.
How about entrepreneurial development of materials so that everything we're using recycles?
Yeah, but that was that you, Jane?
Yeah.
So, but I was just talking with some people who are leading career and technical education in West Virginia. And one of the things they do is they do entrepreneurial CTE, business CTE, which is like, what? And they're like, it totally works, because a lot
Yeah.
of this actually is you need entrepreneurial business systems in order to create a renewable energy and regenerative future. I'm like, that's brilliant. And they've been like, yeah, we've been at this for 10 years. So the entrepreneurial education work shows up here very naturally, but we had never named it that way, as far as I know.
Right. We already said series, but I would like to say the green investment stuff is starting to take off.
Yeah.
So
funders.
that's exciting in the financial sector.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also thinking,
why don't you go, Frank, then John?
okay. So I'm also thinking trade associations pushing transitions. I'm thinking in particular that I don't know if they're still in business. I don't know their names, but there was actually a trade association started amongst workers on the Alberta tar sands that were saying, look, this is not what we want to do. And so we're trying to help our co-workers move in new directions. So I really think identifying and encouraging them would be great.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on the financial sector and the entrepreneurs. That My Climate Journey fellow that's higher up on the list there with his podcast, he really is a leader. He came from the .com world. He's attracting all this .com energy all into environmental. It's all about how do you reset? How do you redirect your life? You made your money. Now how do you move forward? So they've got a VC fund that's just been in recent, but let's get a couple people from this team on his podcast. It gets a lot of listenership. And then let's also hit Climate One, Energy Gang, and a lot of those types of messaging. I mean, podcasts are quick and they have a wide reach.
Thank you, John.
So just on the distribution note, I would just want to put on the entertainment education teams from Johns Hopkins, because that's going to improve the reach of the work across a lot of different media types.
Okay. You guys are going into new territory here. I'm right with you. That's cool. Because I mean, actually, the wider we are able to do this in the beginning, the more people will join in. I'm with you. I'm just acknowledging a little bit of a turn. That's cool. We can go there.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good. It's totally smart.
Any others or other thoughts that folks want to share about how this work might travel? I think it's very helpful to name spaces like John just did, of like particular podcast connections that we should make, or because I know that I'm going to totally do that move, Tom. I know that Tom is really available for conversations like this, and much more eloquent than sometimes others can be in terms of language to use with different communities. But I'm able to do some of that too, and others on the team are as well. So like finding the right person to connect with that might be, or a combination of people that might be, to be able to like talk would be great.
Great. Nancy? Nancy.
Two other names. Ed Salzberg and Tony Seba.
Can you spell it? Can you type into the chat Seba? Just so
SEBA.
SEBA. Okay, cool. All right. We got 8 minutes left, guys. What else? Nancy, do you have more?
Just coming out of the drawdown conference in our breakout session that you were in, I had a long conversation with Maria afterwards, and the way they're setting up this new graduate program at Georgetown University that she's putting together for climate, they're combining it with business. The following year, they're combining it with public administration. The third year, they're doing a new master's in health, and then one in law. So I asked her, do you have a database of the universities who already have environmental programs that you're checking out for comparison contrast? She said, yes. I said, would you be willing to use that list to promote ACE?
Yeah.
and get all of those people on board as signatories for it.
Thank you, Nancy. I very much appreciate that. Leslie, given you haven't said anything, I'm just going to call you into this if you don't mind. But the Aztec community play historically a huge role here. I know that if you're not tracking, the cultural and informal education institutions have been really just demolished by the COVID impacts. So asking a lot of them right now is just not, it's tone deaf. But at the same time, you guys play a critical role. So from Leslie, what you're seeing in your community now is when would that be culturally, when would that be respectful, given the harm that's been done to that important enterprise?
I think it's absolutely fine to contact people and see what they can do. I mean, obviously, you know, some of our main players like the Climate Museum and the Wild Centre, they're always going to be ready to step up and do whatever they can. But,
right.
but I think that, yeah, I mean, climate change, and Aztec is doing more and more work around community science. We've just started a partnership with Thriving Earth Exchange, AGU, with a lot of projects on flooding. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely continue to count us in.
Let me say one thing that I didn't say earlier, just because on this exact point, Leslie, is that the way I was participating in the US in these international conversations, remember that flow chart that they've international meetings, one of the things, the way other countries use ACE national strategy is crucial to this conversation. They build a strategy, they align all of the programs across the government that should be aligned to the strategy to reprioritize those funding streams to this work. And then they revise the plan and look at accomplishments and challenges. But that middle point, where you're realigning programs to these priorities that they were part of in the development of, enables more resources to flow in this directed area. And the federal government is going to have to play a larger role for a while because of the social challenges to states, counties, cultural institutions, and at the subnational level across. So just I want to be explicit here. We're looking at that as a possible way of directing more funds into this work, because if we don't, it's just a plan. And you know, somebody said a plan, something like, you know, a plan without this done is a wish. This is not a wish. We got to have the resources that actually implement, not just a plan that we could implement, just so we understand where we're coming from.
And on a bit of that note, as far as resources and actualizing this, I want to throw out there that, you know, we've got a cool list, but at least as if not more important than who you reach out to is how you reach out to them. Yeah. And to do this well, it's going to take somebody or a group coordinating an outreach effort that's sensitive to like reaching out in a way that's not asking to check a box. Like, hey, community who we'd like on our list, can you put your signature here? Thanks, bye. But in a way that will take the time to communicate what that connection will be with that group, how they'll be supported through this work and will attend to the work of partnership rather than just checking a box. So I think sooner rather than later, as soon as possible, we need the support to have that person or team who is coordinating that outreach and sustained partnership effort.
So I'm going to ask Haley, in the paper you guys just wrote, and I think it's also in the framework, but I think it's even more clearly in the paper you wrote, Haley, there was a principle that related to, what was it like? It's not extractive. It's Curtis Bennett named this in the development process really beautifully out of Baltimore. But what's that principle?
Relational and not transactional work. So instead of just, you know, taking things from a community and saying thank you, or even giving them an honorarium or something, like making sure they have decision-making power and are deeply involved in the work,
and so
in an ongoing way.
Patrick, that is absolutely in the marrow of this work. And a lot of that's because people like yourself have named that as a challenge. If we don't overcome, it won't really be a true national plan. And so that's a testament to a commitment to how we do this. It's in the framework. It's in the surrounding materials around the framework. But if we don't do it that way, don't expect this to be very transformational. People will walk because they can, and they'll be upset because it didn't fulfill its potential. So just know that we're doing something very different here, because that's not normally how we do things like what you said. But if we don't do it that way, it won't be transformational, and transformation is what is needed. So,
and I would like to add, even with government agencies across the board, same thing of relationship building, the realignment, that changes the bully pulpit and their own sense of ownership and meaningfulness in their work as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I have to head out, so I'm gonna thank everyone for being here today. And but I also just wanted to note from one of the comments, yes, we have reached out to NAAWE, but we haven't actually hit the National Association for Interpretation, so we should probably do that.
Judy Browse was actually signing on today, so already did that.
Yes.
But NAI is another one. Agreed. We are at time. So Deb, I appreciate you being with us. Everyone else, appreciate you being with us. Do not consider this a extractive moment, but an invitation to be part of a relationship going forward. So this is just another step on that milestone, but we wanted to come back to and fulfill a charge of the Clean Leadership Board 13 months ago. So consider this a check, but not a done. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for your contributions, and thank you for all the people who've done such heavy work for so long. Hopefully we continue to do it more together. So thank you all. Devardi, I'm going to give it back to you and close the meeting.